Hi everyone, this is Mr Neel Raithatha, also known as the Wax Whisperer. Thank you for tuning into this latest video. The patient in this procedure attended with bilateral, so when I say bilateral I mean both ears. If I say unilateral it means one ear. So bilateral occluding earwax. We're starting off with the patient's right ear. And the wax here is quite dry. There's a lot of skin, a lot of dead keratin here, and we're at the entrance, and we know we're at the entrance because of all the hair strands. So it's the outer third of the ear canal, the cartilaginous portion of the ear canal that bears all the hair follicles. The outer third of the ear canal, the cartilaginous portion, also bears the two glands that contribute and compose of earwax, and they are the ceruminous glands, if we have them, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Ceruminous glands are glands that produce an oily, sweaty substance. They are exclusively found in the ear, under your armpits, and in your genitalia region if you do have them. And also the outer third, the cartilaginous portion of the ear canal, also bears the sebaceous glands. The sebaceous glands are found all across all the hair follicles across the body, so including your scalp, and they produce a substance called sebum, which is composed of alcohols, long chains of saturated and unsaturated fatty acids, cholesterol, squalene, and sebum is a very oily, viscous, sticky, lipid, waxy substance. So we just remove the wax there. You can see the eardrum in the distance. This patient's ear canal everyone's ears are oval shaped, so with the height being greater than the width, but this patient's ear canal is a bit more slit, a bit more narrow, a bit more oblique, with the ratio between the height and width being greater, so it gives you this kind of more elongated view. Just some dead keratin on the base. It's not really significant. It's not going to, if I do remove that, it's not going to improve the patient's symptoms, but it was loose, so I just thought let me just use a fine end tip, see if I can remove that. So in general I would say the patient's earwax is quite dry in overall, which would suggest that they don't have the ceruminous glands. So there are two distinct types of earwax, wet and dry. If you have wet earwax, it means that you've got the ceruminous glands. If you've got dry earwax, it means that you don't have the ceruminous glands. So if you look at the patients, and you'll see it in a moment, we're just going to switch to the left ear. This is just a final examination of the patient's right ear. So this is the patient's left ear, and you can see the wax is a bit more glutinous. So it would imply that it's a bit more wet. It looks a bit more wet, but it's a false wetness. This is not the natural consistency of the patient's earwax. The patient advised me that their left ear was the worst one, and they've been putting drops in this ear at night when they're in bed, laying down. And I believe it to be because the patient had been using drops in this left ear, that's the reason why this earwax looks wet. If the patient had the ceruminous glands, then you would expect the earwax in the right ear to be automatically wet, but it wasn't, that was dry. So the difference between the wet and dry earwax is a single genetic mutation on a single gene, and the gene is the ABCC11 gene. If you have wet earwax, it means that you have at least one dominant guanine allele present. If you have dry earwax, it means that you have two homozygous, so identical, adenine alleles, and they're both recessive. So you've inherited a recessive adenine allele from both your mum and your dad, so your mother and father, and that gives you dry earwax. So guanine and adenine are two of the four nucleobases that compose our genes. So there's four in total: adenine, guanine, thymine, and I think the last one's pronounced thymine. So the sequence of these four amino acids then develop different types of proteins, and there's only four nucleobases, and it's the genetic code in which sequence these are all arranged in that then of the building, the kind of the instruction work for the arrangement of amino acids, which obviously amino acids, when they're all built together, make protein. So you can imagine the number of different variations you can have just with 4 nuclear bases. So just to recap, if you've got a dominant guanine allele on the ABCC11 gene, it means that you have wet earwax. And if you have 2 homozygous adenine alleles, recessive alleles, that means you've got dry earwax. Another interesting fact, guys, if you've got wet earwax, so the ceruminous glands, so the ceruminous glands is the reason why you have wet earwax, it secretes this oily sweat. That sweat also contains a chemical, and when bacteria feed on that chemical, it releases a really foul odour. So if you've got, if you have armpit odour, that means you have got ceruminous glands. And that also means you've got wet earwax, guys. So if you've got body odour and you use deodorant or antiperspirant, wet earwax, so that genetic mutation for wet earwax is more prevalent in Caucasian people and African people. Dry earwax is more common in people from the Far East and North America. So it's just a genetic difference between the two. So this patient has been using the drops, as I said. That is why the patient's earwax is wet. It's not, I don't believe it's a natural wet earwax, because if it was, she would have had it in the right ear as well, but it wasn't on that side, and she didn't use drops on that side. She did tell me it's only this side she put drops in. Unfortunately, the patient would also use a cotton bud and really impacted this wax deep in the ear, in the recesses. So about a ½ centimetre away from the ear canal, from the eardrum, sorry, the ear canal narrows and protrudes outwards. It's called the isthmus, and that creates a trench, it creates recesses, little caves. She had one inferiorly at the bottom of the ear canal and one anteriorly to the left-hand side, as we're viewing now. And the patient had managed to get the wax lodged. I wanted to put some more drops in today just to loosen this, to bind the soft wax together, but the patient had a really bad neck, and I use an ENT chair as opposed to a couch. So the patient wasn't able, because she had a bad neck, she wasn't able to tilt her head completely over. And because the wax is very medial against the eardrum, there's no point in me putting the drops in unless we can get the drops to penetrate very deep in the ear. So I just persisted. At this stage, the patient's symptoms have been alleviated. There's a bit of wax just there on the back part of the eardrum. It's non-significant, it's just staining. I was going to approach it after I just removed this dead skin, but then the patient developed what we call the caloric effect. So sometimes when we vacuum the ear very, very close to the eardrum in particular, it reduces the ear temperature, which then inhibits the balance organ in this ear. So we have a balance organ in each ear. And when we inhibit the balance organ in one ear, compared to the other ear, your brain gets mixed messages from both organ balances, and it thinks you're moving and you're not, and you can get dizzy. And the patient started to experience the caloric effect. So we thought, let's just leave the procedure there. The patient can hear, they're fine. That wax will now naturally migrate out of the eardrum. Advise them not to use a cotton bud to poke in the ear, because they're only forcing it further in. I hope you enjoyed that video, guys, and the explanation about the differences between the wet and dry earwax and the genetic mutation that causes the difference. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday, and I'll speak to you all shortly. Bye.